Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 108.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
In this episode, we are going to be talking to another blogger. Blogger is Rowell Dionicio of Clear to Send podcast, and how blogging and podcasting has changed not only his career, but his entire life, and how it's changed where he's at. So that's up first. Second up, we have an interview I did with Mitch Dickey on how to make SCA great again. A little play on Trump's Make America Great, but it's about single-channel architecture. I hope you enjoy these sessions. They're pretty good. I know I enjoyed them during the interviews. So enjoy the episode.
Main session.
Welcome back. This is Keith Parsons with Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, and my guest today is Rowell Dionicio. Did I say that right?
That's correct. You got it.
It's got lots of letters in it. I happen to be in Utah today, and you are?
I am in San Jose. I'm at home.
Good place. I hear when you do your own podcasts, you have a glass of wine. Is it wine time there yet?
Not yet. I didn't quite get that in time. I literally got home about 30 minutes ago. So I just sat with my son, finished up the Lego movie, the Batman Lego movie, and came down here.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I just thought it'd be good to, a couple of things. One, cross-promote podcasts. You're with Clear to Send. Love the title, especially for Wi-Fi guys. It has a lot of meaning. You could have done, like RTS instead.
Well, so the way I did it was, if I did request to send, I'm like requesting to send info to you, audio. So I said, clear to send. Basically just, I'm clear to send it, or you're clear to send, I just figured good to go, and audio's streaming your way.
So the job of your whole podcast is to deliver the duration ID.
Yep.
Well, good. The topic I wanted to talk about with you is, I've known you for a couple of years now, and from before you were even the podcast guru and head social media person you are today, and wanted to just go back in history a little bit and find out, what triggered this change. You now are in social media. You now have 80 something podcast episodes.
Yeah, I think we're at 84 now. I'm starting to lose count.
But that is a good number, and that's taken a lot of work, and it really helps build the community. So, first, thank you for that. But can you go a little back in history, and you were doing Wi-Fi before you were doing podcasting and blogging. What was the trigger point that made you finally say, I should actually write some of this stuff down?
Yeah, it started off, I was working for a small MSP in San Diego, and I started getting into Cisco Wireless, and I found that I was doing it wrong. When I started looking into more information, I found myself with the CWNP material. And as I started reading it, I found, man, I could do this much better, right? So at least I caught myself there and started optimizing my networks. And then I started looking at, okay, what else can I find out there? And of course, I stumbled upon your podcast, and also some other ones like No Strings Attached Show. And so I started listening to those, and it got to a point where I listened to every single episode that you guys had produced. And I wasn't really involved with the community just yet, not a lot. So I said, well, I can do something completely different and put myself in an uncomfortable situation, which would lead me to grow in this field. And so I said, you know what? I might not be the expert in the field, but I can certainly learn and then help educate other people who are just starting out like I was. And so that's when I decided to do the podcast. And so it was you and Blake and Sam that helped me get this format running and then help contribute back to the community.
Well, you've done a bang up job. Actually, you've exceeded if you count all of our podcasts together, you've got more episodes than we do in total. So well done there. How's that experience over these 85 episodes changed you, your career, and how? And yeah, just let's start there.
Yeah, you know, when you first start off this, the first thing that comes to mind, anyone who started in podcasting or just doing audio, is I don't like the sound of my voice. So I quickly had to get over that, right? And just produce content that I thought would be useful to other people. And I hope it still is. I hope the content's great. And it also helped me learn as well, because I feel that teaching other people whatever you're learning is the best way to learn. If you can explain something easily to somebody and they understand, then that helps you grow as well. And that also helped me kind of get out of this this bubble I was in and being shy with people and being shy with, you know, putting myself out there. So now I'm a little bit better. I can approach people. I can say things with online and not be scared about saying it. But it kind of helps you put yourself into a position and help make yourself become more of an expert in the technology.
You don't seem shy to me at all. So you've overcome that really, really well.
Well, I try sometimes. It's also the in-person stuff is still something I try to get used to.
Well, the problem with that in-person thing is there's actually people there, and you have to like
exactly.
People. I mean, really, we like our technology, but the people side,
Yeah, people's side's different. And I can hide behind a microphone, and I could always re-record and make it a little bit better. But now, after all these episodes, I kind of just record and let it go, and I try not to, cut out the ums and the little phrases that you try not to say. So I just let it go, and it's more natural that way.
Sometimes, you mean like that?
Yep, exactly.
So you're a part of this whole social media phenomenon. How social is social media?
Man, it's gotten to the point where I can't even keep up anymore, right? It started off with Twitter. Twitter was great when I started following a few people, and then I started adding more people that I follow, and then it got to a point where I started creating lists on Twitter so I can just follow wireless people and keep everyone else on my main feed. And then came Slack, so you got different Slack groups and channels, and it's becoming a pain to be everywhere. And so to be social, lately I've been kind of quiet just because I've been so busy, but I try to at least read what people are saying, participate in discussions, and try not to be afraid of being wrong sometimes, because sometimes that's going to happen.
Oh, for me, it happens all the time. My question was more focused on the social aspect. Some people, not you and me, of course, other people, like my wife and others, that you're like, these aren't your real friends. They're just people on the internet. And having seen a bunch of posts coming from Cisco Live, what's your reaction when people say, "Oh, they're not real friends. They're just internet friends"?
Yeah, my wife will tell me to get off my phone a lot of times. I'm like, but I'm communicating, I'm participating. And it's different because a lot of us work individually, right? And we're not necessarily, as a group in the industry, we're not all working together in person. So I feel that social media is the best way to communicate with people in our field, in our industry, if they're not in the same room with you. So I think that's the way social media plays out. It's interesting because I think my career started off with social media. I have to give social media, a hand there in helping me get to where I am today.
And that was why I had you on, just so you could say that one line. I see a lot of people who say they're, well, I'm on Twitter and I don't know how to, do what you guys do.
It's so just like talking to somebody in person, except you're limited to 140 characters.
You just mentioned that it was, kind of the start of your career. How so?
Well, it all started off when I started tweeting about networking. So just generally about networking, not really specific to wireless. And with social media, it's really about creating relationships. So I started making actual friends that I would meet in person whenever we could, at conferences like Cisco Live. And from there, one thing led to another, and I got a job at another location. And that helped also, get me into an area where technology is everywhere, Silicon Valley. And that kind of helped me get to where I am today because of just who I'm able to connect with and socialize with on Twitter and just create relationships. So I think creating those friendships with people and not just treating people on Twitter as just, an avatar or a person, just being friends. It's I don't know, it's different with this community, especially in the Wi-Fi community.
And you just have to engage. Just sitting and being a troll and just listening along is, get in there, answer questions, ask questions, do those kind of things. Well,
Yeah.
I just wanted to go in the Wayback Machine and remind you of a visit to a bowling alley in, where was it? San Jose? No. Palo Alto or someplace?
I think it was near Cupertino or something like that.
Yeah, when you came for a tech field day and said, oh man, how do I get involved in this? And I think to a person, everyone told you the same thing. Blog,
yeah, pretty much.
Twitter, do it. And now you are one.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How many years ago was that? Like 3?
And so when people ask and say, how do you do that? You just,
You just do it.
And you came and said, I'd like to be here. How do I become a Tech Field Day delegate? How do I have followers? And now you did. So how did you do that?
Sure. Yeah. That one day when I met you guys, I wasn't a delegate yet, but I did actually attend the post event at the bowling alley. So I was able to communicate with you guys and see some of you guys for the first time. And with the feedback you guys I know it sounds generic to just do it, just start blogging or just start tweeting. Really, what it comes down for me is the blogging piece. And so to even get started on blogging, you just got to come up with a topic, right? Whatever you're learning about, if it's about how association works over Wi-Fi, go and try to figure out what that looks like, how that happens and occurs, what tools did you use to gather the data, and just document that. And so it looks technical at first, but then you massage it and add it as a conversation. You go, hey, I used Wireshark on my MacBook Pro using AirTool, and I was able to sniff the frames on this channel and saw these frames. That kind of thing helps you develop a different mindset. And so when you write about it, you're actually describing a lot of the processes in words, so it has to be understandable. I try to write it so it's understandable for somebody who's not that technical. And so I think that helped me as I kept writing a lot more. It helped open doors to other engagements where I start writing or even taking part in Tech Field Day.
Back up, and I just want you to repeat that again about the value of writing.
Sure. Yeah, and writing
because other people say, "Oh, you don't need to be able to write."
Oh yeah, if you just practice writing, right? It takes time. And if you go through my blog and look at my earliest posts, they're not the best, but you just want to keep writing. Just start writing. I take notes in Evernote. I write bullet points on what I want to touch upon, and then I just elaborate on those bullet points. So you take the technical content and you just try to just rephrase it into a way like as if you're describing it to a 5-year-old kid, right? Tell it like I'm 5, and so or explain it like I'm 5, however they say it on Reddit. But you just want to explain it so that you're teaching someone who doesn't know anything about the topic. And if you can do that and write it, you'll improve over time. And it's okay to just put something out there that's not perfect, right? You just have to overcome the perfection piece. And people in our industry will correct you if you're wrong. And it's not to say, hey, whatever you said is incorrect. It's more of a peer review, and it's education. And we're not just trying to put each other down. We're just here to learn and help teach others. So writing, when I first started out, I just wrote what came to my mind. And then eventually you get better as you write. You'll use like a thesaurus to even come up with synonyms for words to make it sound a little bit better. Just start writing is basically my advice there.
The sad part is all these things come down to just do it. One of the terms I like comes from like Eisenhower times when he just said, be in the arena.
Mhm.
If you're not engaged, you don't have to be great. Just start. And I can't tell enough people that. Now, there was a story from a tech field day from years and years ago when someone had mentioned a scenario and everyone in the room agreed. And the scenario was, I was Googling, I had this idea, I had a question, I Googled it, and my own blog came up.
Mm-hmm. That happens to me too.
And so if you think of your blog just as, Google's pretty good at being my memory for me, even for the things, if I was interested in it once, I'll probably forget it and be interested in it again. So I had to put it in a blog.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny because sometimes, or one time I had a coworker come up to me and said, "Hey, can you Google this?" And I Googled it and he goes, "What's that result right there? Can you click on that?" And I'm like, "All right, dude, that's my blog." Why are you making me click on it? But it's funny because your own coworkers are going to find you. So if that's a concern, one of the things I recommend is you want to sanitize whatever you're saying and make sure you don't publish something you shouldn't be publishing, like sensitive information.
My coworker Joe, man, he stinks.
Yeah.
Don't want to put those kind of things in there.
Nope. Yeah, don't make any references to coworkers. Don't make any references to the layout of your network and other IP addresses and things like that. So usually what I do is I lab it up in my own environment if you're able to get the equipment. Or if you have equipment at work that you can just wipe and do basic names and basic IP address schemes, so that way you're not using it on production.
Good recommendation. So I read some things about podcasts that a lot of podcasts have podcast fade. They kind of disappear after a while. My Wireless and Weekly went like 50 episodes before I dropped out. Actually, I just got too busy. Kudos to you for hitting 80 something. You're definitely on a stride. What's the future for Clear Descent?
Yeah, I will say it's probably one of the most difficult things to do, podcasting, and you'll understand this because if you don't have the resources to help you, you have to do everything on your own. You have to set up the microphone, the mixer, make sure the audio's good. Then you got to do the editing afterwards. And I've gone through growing pains on the podcast myself. I mean, there's weeks where I don't record it. And now I have another host on to at least help with topics and help start discussions back and forth, because it gets boring talking to yourself, talking to the wall. But what we want to do is bring on more interviews that help kind of boost the education. So like one of the most favorite episodes I've done, which is recent, was the one with Devin. And I felt like I learned so much from that podcast. And that's what we want to do, is help educate people and also bring in news about the industry, what's going on. And a perfect example is Mobility Field Day that's coming up, which for sure we'll be podcasting about.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I remember I had Francois in a class in Oslo, Norway. And I was like, "Yeah, you want to go to dinner tonight?" And he's like, "No, I have to go podcast." And so he was like, I can't. The timing is I have to be here to, rather than wake up early in the morning. So yeah, it's a commitment. You have to kind of cut other things out in order to dedicate the time.
Yeah, I wish he told me. I would have let him go to the dinner.
Oh, no. Oh, he had his wife there too. So they would have rather been together with me. Old crotchety old guy. Well, thanks, Rowell, for your time. I appreciate all you've done in the podcasting world, helping the community. Anything we can do to help grow more people to understand more things about how Wi-Fi works, and to let them learn that they can be involved just as well. Yeah, everyone I know who's involved in Wi-Fi at some point wasn't, wanted to, and got engaged. So if you're listening and you'd like to be more involved, just listen to Rowell and just do it.
Just do it.
Now, you got Nike paying you on the backside for that. Actually, they probably sue you for using their term. So,
all right. So I'll say it as, just go ahead and do it.
There you go. Well done. Well done. Well, thanks for your time today, Rowell.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Divergent Dynamics with Devin Akin.
Today's webinar synopsis is about AP on a stick. You can find a detailed webinar on this topic at brighttalk.com. That's brighttalk with 2 T's, .com. Just search on Devin Akin to find a list of my webinars there, and you'll find AP on a stick. APoS is the abbreviation. The industry has consistently changed over the last 15 years, and it continues to change even still. Moving forward with more efficient methodologies and processes is necessary to keep costs down and to build higher performing networks. It's not okay to use 1999 processes in 2016. Firmly understanding RF propagation is essential to designing high-performing wireless LANs. We use a concept pioneered by Keith Parsons called want, don't care. We use this to illustrate usable signal coverage that makes our applications work on our mobile devices versus an unusable signal coverage that causes interference. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of an overview of what's in the webinar. So we cover design process. There's 4 basic high-level steps to designing wireless LANs: define, design, deployment, and validation/optimization. Understanding all of these processes, all the ones that are involved in these 4 steps, is critical to creating high-performing wireless LANs. An RF model, which we call designing, is a what-if scenario, whereas RF site surveying is a what is scenario. AP on a stick isn't dead or obsolete, but there's an appropriate way to use this process or a set of processes to collect meaningful data that can be used to adjust an RF model. We often use AP on a stick as a way of spot checking our RF model against devices that we care about in the real world. A common mistake when doing AP on a stick surveys is walking only enough to get an understanding of the want portion of the signal coverage. You should always walk until the signal can no longer be decoded, which means that you have collected the don't want as well. This will allow the survey engineer to understand co-channel interference in the environment. Another common mistake is not walking plus or minus a floor in the facility in order to get 3D coverage area of an AP. New methodologies have engineers measuring and documenting wall loss, spot checking coverage for real devices against the RF model, and then adjusting their model for real-world applicability. A person should always perform a post-install passive survey. How could you possibly understand whether the design and deployment worked out properly unless you measured the network after the installation? There still exists some occasions when AP on a stick is appropriate. So if AP on a stick is necessary, customers should assure that integrators are performing the entire process correctly, and customers should expect integrators to use the most time and cost-efficient process possible in any circumstance. Thank you.
WLAN interview.
Hello, everyone. This is Keith Parsons again, and today I'm with Mitch Dickey. Mitch, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Keith. How are you doing?
Great. We are recording this in the middle of the summer. And what's your weather like back there in Virginia?
Terrible. It's hot and sticky, and that's about all it is. That's the best I can explain it.
And that's the good way of saying it.
Yeah, really.
Well, I thought it would be a good chance for us to get an opportunity to talk a little bit about something that you're good at that not a lot of people in our audience know about. Mm-hmm. And that's signal channel architecture. At the last WLPC, you gave a great presentation on how you've got it working well, and I thought we could take some time and answer some questions about it. Are you up for that?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
You are the SCA man. So first of all, do you still call it Maru, or have you started calling it Fortinet or
I like to call it Fortaroo, actually.
Fortaroo, okay.
Yeah. I like to think that I coined that phrase, but most of the time it's just Maru still to me, just out of habit, I guess. But obviously all the newer things that we get is coming branded Fortinet now. But as far as being close to my heart, I think Maru will stay for a while.
Well, for a lot of our listeners who maybe didn't have a chance to be at WLPC, can you just give us a recap of the size of your network? How many schools, how many APs, controllers, just kind of the broad brushstroke?
So right now, as of today, actually, we just finished turning up our, I think, 17th middle school. So there's still a few APs that aren't connected there yet that we're working with the electrical contractor with. But as of right now, there's 5,851 access points on the network right now. That includes 99 controllers. So we've got, I can't remember the exact amount. We got 50 couple elementary schools, 16 high schools, I believe is what it is, and I think now our 17th middle school, and we're fixing to build schools one right after another, so it's not going to slow down anytime soon.
So what you're saying is it's just a little small K-12.
Yeah, it's just a little one, not very big, just kind of country.
So where do you keep all those 99 controllers?
Well, there's one in each building. For the most part, there's a couple that aren't a couple buildings that don't have a controller, or maybe it's just one. I don't remember, but it's just like small support sites where I'll be honest with you. There's several sites that don't necessarily need a controller, but as far as ease of management, they chose to do one controller per location. So I'll be honest, I like it that way because it's easier to manage and it just works really good for us. So, but there's one for the most part in every building, whether that be a support site or a school or what have you.
I'm not that familiar with Maru. Do you have some single pane of glass management platform that can let you work them all at the same time?
Sure. Yeah, it's called EasyRF. I believe they're sticking with EasyRF as the name of it. It's been that way for as long as I've worked with it. Right now, on my screen right now, I've got a fairly recent pane up right now, and they call it 40WLM, which I probably will never, ever call it. But so basically what that does is it inventories all of our equipment into one screen, so I can break down, how many stations are on across the entire county. I can break that down to school. Obviously, I can get a lot of the same information from each controller, but this EasyRF gives me one pane of glass to look into to see it. And right now, being that it's 5:30 on a Friday during the middle of the summer, we currently have 4,018 devices according to my screen right now, which is practically nothing compared to
what's your high?
Our high, which it's funny you ask because I keep a running list here on a little sticky note, and as of May 24th of this year, max concurrent users was 68,281. So I anticipate that at the beginning of this next school year, we'll easily be over 70,000. If not on the first day, within the first week or two, I'm sure we'll peak over 70,000 concurrent. So that, like I said, being concurrent, that's obviously all on at the same time. Usually that's about between 10:30 and 11 a.m. every day, which I'm not really sure why then. And it kind of just trickles down until 4 o'clock or so, and then it drops off drastically.
So you're running just gross numbers there, 11, 12 clients per AP?
So I averaged it out, and that was actually in my presentation. It's roughly 10, 11, 12 clients per AP if you average it across. Now, obviously, there's some sites that, might not see but 10 or 12 clients in a day, like maybe a small office that we have somewhere in the county. And then, obviously, a high school will see close to 2,000, 2,500 at peak. And so maybe one of those APs in one of those areas in the high school will be, 50 to 80 clients, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less on average.
Well, obviously a large and working quite well network there. So being the SCA champion there, which is totally fine. You've got it working. I mean, there's no better proof than in the pudding when you actually have something working. One of the things that Maru's was pushing was specifically going to 80 megahertz channels. Have you found with SCA going to wider channels gives you better results?
I do, actually, and we definitely use it. Obviously, being that we can design for single channel in most cases, we definitely employ 80 megahertz everywhere that we have an AC access point that I can think of right now. There might be a few exceptions to that rule right now, but for the most part, all of our new schools have AC access points. Now, our existing schools that would have got the stuff or the equipment when we first ordered it, they still have a lot of N stuff, so they don't have 80 megahertz capable access points. But a lot of what we'll call high density areas in some of those locations may have been retrofitted with some of these AC APs, and yes, we will make them 80 megahertz unless there's some kind of reason not to. Obviously, I have a lot more spectrum to work with, so it's a finite amount of spectrum, but obviously because of the way we do it, I can design a little bit differently, and we do use 80 megahertz, and it works fantastic.
Do you have any density where you need to put the second or third overlay?
So, as an example, a lot of times, so without going into a whole lot of detail, because we could be here talking for hours. In a typical high school auditorium, we'll have 7 high density access points, and typically, and we're actually doing some testing right now, just to see if we can improve on it. There's nothing wrong with it. It works fine the way it is, but we're always looking to improve. They're all on the same channel, 1 and 149. So in a typical high school auditorium, like I said, we'll have 7 access points, and they'll all be on the same channel. But we've been experimenting with basically not layering as much as striping. So we'll do, this is just generally speaking, it depends on, the placement of the APs and whatnot in these schools, but we'll maybe the first 2 APs, which are for the most part in the front of the auditoriums, will be under one ESS profile, which is just like a virtual cell or a virtual BSSID, and they'll be on the same channel. And then the second group of APs, which is typically 3 access points, which sits and covers primarily the center part from left to right of the auditorium, will be another virtual cell. And then again, typically there's 2 more behind those in the back of the auditorium, which will then be another virtual cell. And what we found in testing is, even though the way we previously did it with all of them being on the same channel, and it working fine with high density, even it seems to be working even better. We're getting a lot better performance out of it, and a lot of times if we do that, I will make the channels 40 megahertz. For obvious reasons, because I need to start reusing some spectrum. So, but that's just something we're toying around with right now. It's definitely deployed in other places. We're not the first to discover that. It's a design option, if you will, that's available in our toolkit, and we plan, as soon as we get back from Mobility Field Day next week, me and the guys are probably going to start messing around with that a little bit and doing some testing and some perfing and see how it works out. But we have full expectation that it's going to work even better than it already does.
Well, that's good to hear, because that's about as dense as it's going to get in a K-12.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. A high school cafeteria is probably our busiest during lunch, but an auditorium, they usually throw everything they have at it when it's occupied. We don't plan for auditorium capacity, but we do plan for a significant number of users or devices, if you will. So
Well, next question, and I don't expect you to speak for Fortaroo. Looking forward to AX. Have you heard anything coming with respect to single channel and newer features?
To be perfectly honest with you, no, I have not. I haven't personally, just AX in general. I mean, I know very basics with it, but no, I have not. We have plans to talk with Fortaroo here soon. So that'd definitely be on the list to see what their plan is as far as that is concerned. But to be perfectly honest, no, we have not talked about it going forward.
Well, the last question I have for you isn't really about your single channel architecture. It's, I know, one of your hobbies. And has ham radio been one of those things that helped you in your career in wireless?
Absolutely.
Or did wireless help you get more into ham?
I am glad you asked that question, because obviously I know you're a fellow ham, and yes, there are times. I mean, when it all comes down to it, RF is RF. So whether that be Wi-Fi or whatever mode you're using in amateur radio, but yes, there are parts and modes, if you will, in amateur radio where you can use quote unquote Wi-Fi equipment under not Part 15 rules of FCC, but Part 97 rules, which grant you different power levels and whatnot. But yes, absolutely, point-to-point links, stuff like that. But absolutely, and that's not the only thing. Antenna propagation, stuff like that. It definitely does. You can see bits and pieces of each in the other one, if you will, and I'm sure you've probably noticed that as well. But I was a Wi-Fi guy before I was an amateur radio operator. I've always been kind of interested in radio. I mean, I did start out with the Chicken Band several years ago, but then I got into Wi-Fi about 6-7 years ago, and then I decided I wanted to go amateur radio route. So, but yes, to your question, yes, there's definitely ties to both. And I mean, do you feel the same way about it?
Yeah, it's it's different and the same, and some of the same concepts are the same, and how you use dB and antennas.
Yep.
I think amateur radio is a little more, has a lot more technicality, and because it's got so many more frequencies we have to deal with.
Right.
And lots of different pieces to the hobby, from doing the long distance bits to whatever. Oh, I was just going to ask, you built a did you use Linksys or something and make a ham link?
Yeah, so that's kind of going back to what
tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so HamNet. Now I haven't dabbled in it for a while, to be honest with you. It's probably been a year or so.
Well, that's a screaming fast speeds.
Yeah, sure does. But when it started out, and I might be saying this wrong, but as far as my understanding, when they started out, they were they're building these smaller networks, and the gear of choice was the WRT 54G for obvious reasons. And you could put a custom load on it, and then it was pretty neat. It would, discover its neighbors through mesh, and you could set up this little network. It was fairly resilient. We used it at field day for our logging software to transfer between stations while people were logging contacts. That kind of went by the wayside because me and a couple other guys wanted to do a little bit bigger and try to make it like regional and just large areas. So currently I have I've got a 5 gigahertz node. It's a Ubiquiti, a piece of hardware, and it's got a grid antenna on it, and it is located on the top of one of my buddies' where I live on his farm, on top of his grain bin, and it points up to a mountain in Madison County where I live, and it has a stable link up there to another similar device, Ubiquiti. I can't remember the exact hardware. Like I said, it's been a while, but another Ubiquiti device up there with a custom load on it for ham radio. and you can transfer data across it. And the idea being that it's mesh is that in this case it's point to point, but the idea is to keep it as omnidirectional as possible so that the network can build itself out. So with that, it's pretty neat. It's very difficult in my area just because of trees and mountains and just any type of thing that, can drive an RF guy nuts. But we have several links are up. We have a pretty long distance one of 20 or 30 some miles. I can't get anything at my house just because of terrain, primarily trees, and obviously the nature of the frequencies we're using. In this case, we're using 2, 4, and 5. We've talked about using 3, 6, and even 900. So I'd like to test some of the 900 megahertz stuff just to see if I can punch through some of that foliage, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. But right now, we've got probably about 5 or 6 nodes that are connected and talking to one another. At last time we checked.
What kind of speeds do you see?
Slow, but enough to accomplish basic communications. So, anything you could, run. We've ran a chat program. I don't even remember what it's called. We ran a chat program across it. We can do phone calls, with IP phones. We've done some of that. So it's fast enough to handle that, but we're not talking. The equipment is G, at best.
But it's not Wi-Fi actual protocol.
I
guess I should have stated that as a question.
Yeah, so it's hard to say, Keith. To be honest with you, it's really hard to say what it actually is. It's using the Wi-Fi hardware, and like I said, and I apologize because I was so into this and I've lost track of it and I've been out of it for a little bit and moving on to contesting and stuff like that. But it's been like a constant evolving thing. It started out, as far as I know, using DSSS and then it moved on to OFDM, and as far as I know, it's still stuck there. So I'm pretty sure it's using Wi-Fi technology. But I honestly, I've been out of it for a little while.
Well, that's good. It was when you first posted, all I was just jealous that you had time to go and play with that stuff.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's cool because it's just another aspect of radio that I didn't have the opportunity to do before. I'm up on a tower on a mountain. That's fun. I'm not stuck, providing Wi-Fi just for a classroom. I'm trying to, set up a point-to-point network for long distances, which I've done before commercially too with a previous job. But it's definitely cool. We still have plans to build it out and link other similar networks that are in the area that might be on the other side of a mountain. But just like Wi-Fi, it requires a lot of planning, requirement defining, testing, and then validating. So, it's fun. I need to get back into it. They've moved leaps and bounds further than when I messed with it last. But I do have a link up that I own, and it works, and we've transferred stuff across it. That's basically all I can tell you.
Well, no, that's great news. Well, Mitch, thanks for your time today and sharing with us a little bit about what you've got there. One final question.
Yep.
So, if someone was new into the industry and you got in just, what'd you say, 7 years ago?
Roughly.
What path would you recommend they start on?
As far as with Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
It's just like training or different
whatever.
parts of
Somebody just came at, say one of the high school seniors said, "Hey, I really like this Wi-Fi thing. What do you think I should do to move my career that way?"
Well, first off, he's probably going to have to sit down because we're going to talk for a while. And my buddies here will even make fun of me for that because once I get started on Wi-Fi, because they understand that I love it. But definitely, I mean, the CWNP track is great. You know, I need to finish up my CWSP right now. That's the last one I got, and all of those trainings have been excellent. But definitely, there's people that have come to me and asked me, you know, I need to get smarter in this stuff. What do you suggest? CWNP is always my first answer. Pick up one of the books, read through the books, take a class. That's definitely good. I mean, it also depends on, you know, how strong their networking background is, because I honestly believe you should probably have a fairly solid networking, wired networking background prior to jumping in. But obviously the CWNA part is best. It covers the basics. I'll be honest, that was probably one of my favorite classes that I took along my path. I can still remember taking that class and going back to my hotel at night and just being excited about learning more the next day. But yeah, I mean, the CWNP is great. I mean, you know that you've been involved in that. It's definitely got me down the path I've, you know, gotten to so far, and I have hopes of putting in my application here before long. So for CWNE, but
hey,
yeah, definitely,
just do it.
Yeah, I know. Actually, you know, it's funny you say that. Robert Bartz called me yesterday, and just to check up on me, because I just had a class with him, and he wanted to see how, you know, my practice has been going and my studying. And I was like, well, I've been really busy, but he's like, as soon as you get back from mobility field day, just do it. Just get in those books and study and do it and get it done. Start that application. So, but yeah, that's where I'm at with that, and I'm really looking forward to it. I set a goal for myself to finish that up by at least my part and submit it before the end of the year. So, but as far as, you know, like your question was, definitely CWNP. It's hands down very enjoyable, very knowledgeable. My buddy here at work has just started it. He just got his CWNA, and he's already looking forward to the next step. So if you really enjoy Wi-Fi and RF and stuff like that, dive in on one of those, and after you finish one, you're going to be excited about the next one. I mean, that's been my experience. That's been an experience from my buddy Brett here. He's ready to go and get the next one too. So, and to be honest with you, even when you're done with the test, I mean, just, you know, all these things too, the learning never stops. So, I mean, there's still things, I mean, that I feel that I'm weak in, that I'm constantly having to go back and review and look through my book and look through the notes I took. And I find that when I go through the stuff, like in the class and get through the test and, you know, get certified or whatnot, I still find myself going back into those books and even learning more even after I've passed the test, especially after I've, you know, come across it in real world. That's what sinks it in for me. But yeah, it's been an awesome ride with CWNP, and that's what I would definitely recommend to others.
Well, I appreciate your opinion and your time spent with us today, and I hope you get to go outside and enjoy the moist heat.
It's fixing to hammer down some rain right now, so that'll be fun because I gotta start my hour-and-a-half commute. So,
well, good luck on your commute, and again, thanks for your time.
Yeah, man, no problem, and I'll see you next week.
All right, see ya. Bye.
See ya.
Wireless LAN terminology.
RADIUS. RADIUS is an acronym that stands for Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service. It's a protocol that uses an authentication server to control network access.
Here we are again at the end of another episode of Wireless LAN Professionals podcast. This is episode 108. Thanks for listening. And again, if you have any comments or questions, you can leave those on WLANpros.com.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.